Dan Bongino. It's the James Show. Sorry to let you down. No, Dan Bongino didn't get an extra 3 hours today. So you have to settle for little old me. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. I don't know when it started. I don't know who the ground zero patient is for it. Mary Kay Letourneau, I guess. When did we have all these female teachers sleeping with students? You remember it in years past. And, we've all marveled at the double standard. If a male teacher sleeps with a female or male student, we get the torches and pitchforks and we string him up outside the city wall and make an example out of him. Kill him! Burn him! If it's a female teacher sleeping with a underage male student, well, what does she look like? And I'm not proud of that. In fact, I find it completely embarrassing. But this is the standards that are the norms in our society. Sorry to just be a frank observer of what's been going on around us, but this one's too far for anybody. I don't even want to tell you these stories because now it's happened so many times that it's not funny anymore. It's not cute anymore. It's not like, oh yeah, Dad high-fived you when you got home. Nah, this is too much. There's been too much of this. It's not, and who cares what she looks like? This is too far. I bet you there's not one person listening after you hear the story from WFAA, and then I'll tell you the rest of the details, that thinks this is funny. 16-year-old student got taken advantage of by their teacher. The story from WFAA first.
Former teacher was accused of having an improper relationship with a student in Louisville ISD. Grapevine police officers arrested Eleni Simonson, and we've learned the alleged crimes took place in 2022 and 23 while she worked at Kilo High School. The district says that's the only school where Simonson worked, and she resigned in February of last year. Investigators tell us it involved one student and don't believe there are other victims as of now.
All right, let's go further down the rabbit hole. Thank you to WFAA for setting that up. I just hate telling the stories at this point. So between the reporting from WFAA and then if you actually go read the police affidavit that was acquired by WFAA, and then a little bit more digging was done by TexasScorecard.com. Here's some more things I learned. She was just arrested on Friday. She had been hired as a high school teacher in August 2022. There's a 16-year-old student who she invited to come live with her. It's referred to as him, so it's a guy. And she didn't just have a dalliance with him. The 16-year-old says, according to all the reports here, that they actually had adult encounters, relations, dozens of times. Dozens. So I don't know what the student's situation is. The only information they give us is the uncle decided to move out of state for work, so the student went to live with who? Went to live with this teacher and her family? The student's mother is where? In Honduras. And the mother in Honduras allowed him to move in with his teacher. So this is what we have. We have the possibility that one of the reasons this teacher singled this kid out and isolated him for abuse that over 40 times they, copulated. One of the things behind that is she had him. She had him in her house. And if he was going to say anything to anybody, she could hold hey, do you want to get deported? Because they don't say that he's illegal in the story. But if he's got a mom who's currently in Honduras, no mention of the dad, there's an uncle who's moving out of state for work, so he has to move in with the teacher. My first question is, his immigration status is of concern. Is he an illegal immigrant? So now it has that angle on it too. So now you have this weird pedophile teacher at a high school in Louisville who finds a kid, a vulnerable kid, who is isolated from the rest of his family, isolated from his parents, isolated from his uncle and extended family, and then takes advantage of that plus the fact that his immigration status could be held over his head, and went forward and used this terrible situation over and over and over. Now, here's where it just gets so mind-blowing you just want to turn off the internet for the rest of the day. In an interview with police, she confirmed that she had a tattoo of the kid's name. The Texas Scorecard report said this lady also has 3 children. One of her 3 children's names is tattooed on her body. The other 2 are not. But this kid, this 16-year-old illegal immigrant boy that she got with, according to this reporting, over 40 times, she got a tattoo of his name. Now, how crazy do you have to be to do this in the first place and then put permanent evidence on your body in the form of a tattoo linking you to this repeated serial crime? This lady is not just crazy. She is delusional crazy. And she was teaching at your kid's high school just until last year. Oh, yeah. I think some of you remember in the James Show episode a couple weeks ago where I was making the argument that, maybe teachers aren't overpaid, or maybe we need to keep a better eye on them, or maybe there's some negative things that need to be addressed within the teaching community. And what did I get? I got the torches and pitchforks. I got the battle scene from Braveheart in my email box, only to be surpassed by the Social Security episode. But hey, in fact, I got another message on that. I might make a whole segment tomorrow about the ongoing Social Security issue. But anyway, here we are again. When they talk about the library book situation and how in the library, they can't have a Bible, but they can have the Gay BCs, or they can have Timmy Has Two Daddies, or they can have all kinds of just graphic, obscene, sexually descriptive stuff available to children. Now, who's taking them to the library? Literal pedophiles are taking them to the how many teachers have to get caught doing it with students before we start saying, hey, how about, this whole separation of church and state? How about a separation between sex and school? How about teachers stop sleeping with students? We stop having secret sex conversations with children behind their parents' backs. We don't care what they do or don't do with their genitals or what their pronouns are, or let's just drop the whole damn thing. Please. Not only are you damaging the kids, but you're probably getting these pedophiles all excited. State records show that she received a certificate to teach English in 2021 and a special education certification in 2022. She still has her licenses. It's currently under review by the TEA. So I'd like to go ahead and put another thumbtack in this story and show you that, the certification process didn't keep evil people away from our kids. Just because you have to go fill out some paperwork and maybe do a test or pay some sort of fee to a government agency, it doesn't make a magic force field around our kids to keep them safe from predators. What's the point of having a certification system if this lady can get a job? What's the point of having a certification system or even pretending like they've been vetted when we're not vetting them? All right, that's going to be my TED Talk. Because the other question that happens every time you see a story like this is like, was this always happening, or do we just know about all of them now because we have social media? Because if this happened, 30 years ago, would you hear about it? It might be printed in the newspaper once. If you saw it, hey, good. But if you didn't see it, then you don't know what happened. But we get to hear about all of them. We get to hear about the teachers that had the threesome in Louisiana, and we get to hear about the hot teacher from your hometown, and then we got to see this teacher. And so we all pass them around because it's a hot, salacious, sexy story, sensational as it is. But I don't know if I have an answer to that. Was this going on just as much 40 years ago, but we could keep our mouth shut and we didn't have social media? And I guess teachers weren't dumb enough to tattoo the name of their victim on their body. God, that's dumb. That's just so dumb. It's not believable. That is just like bang my head against the wall level of stupidity. 800-288-9227 if you have anything to add to that. 800-288-9227. Coming up next, we're going to talk to the patent professor, John Rizvi, about license agreements, and don't get yourself in trouble through the Christmas season with some sort of weird promotion or whatever. We'll talk about it next on The James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, all you beautiful Texans. Welcome back to The James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Yeah, let's go. And just for a second, just stop asking me about the meetup that we had last night. I'll tell you about it in the last segment of the show. We had an informal, unofficial James Parker listener meetup last night. I'll get to it. We have to do the important stuff first. We have a whole bunch of news and rate cuts and omnibus spending bill and all kinds of like actual important stuff before we get to the frivolous fluff of the show. That's going to be at the very end. So stick around for that. Right now, though, my next guest, Michelle Saenz Rodriguez, an immigration attorney. Welcome back to the James Show. First things first, Michelle, have we seen changes in our immigration policy already since Trump won?
Well, I think we've seen a lot of people getting ready, and there was some new rules that were issued yesterday. I think the Biden administration is trying to make some final adjustments before the new administration comes in.
What are these adjustments? I didn't hear about that.
So just yesterday, they finalized some employment-based immigration rules for employers to be able to bring some additional workers in. It was rules that were temporary, and now they're final, and they'll actually go final just a few days before the new administration comes in. And then they also finalized some rules about asylum that will actually make things tougher to get into the United States. And the rule had already come out in the summer, but this finalizes the rule and makes it go final. So it was the part of the border bill that Congress was debating, and this was a side rule that came out, and now it became final yesterday.
Why is he making changes a month before he leaves? What's the point of this?
Not really sure. I think they're trying to keep some of the promises that they made 4 years ago and make sure that they tidy up before probably many changes come in starting in January.
So what do we expect the immediate changes to be? Donald Trump has like 171 executive orders lined up on the first day, but I think the border people probably have a good idea what's coming.
So I think there's been a lot of talk about the deportation orders that will be coming on day one. This mass deportation has been the tagline of the incoming Trump administration. And so I guess we're going to have to see what that really looks like. But on the other end of that, what we have seen is some calls for them to slow down about this talk about mass deportation, because be careful what you ask for, because there are, collateral consequences, and maybe not to the people that you want those consequences to hit. The economic impact of this could really hurt a lot of people. And Texas is one of those states that could really, really feel that economic hit if they do carry out a mass deportation.
So if you are a business owner or a general manager of a business that relies pretty heavily on immigrant labor, is there anything you would recommend they do to get ready?
So I think, and I've got a lot of calls from my employers saying, what am I going to do if my workforce disappears? And I think right now you just want to make sure that all your paperwork is in order and that your employees have their paperwork in order, because we do believe that part of the plan is going to be workplace enforcement. And so we think there will be raids during the first few weeks because that's an easy target. We know that hospitality, construction, agriculture are where we see the undocumented population. And in the state of Texas, California, and Florida, that's where about 42% of all undocumented population is in the United States. So we know that Texas will be hard hit. And that's what we're waiting to see exactly where they will start. But obviously, we're a border state and we employ a lot of the undocumented population. So it really would be a huge economic hit to us.
What have we seen from the new law that passed in Texas where it requires a box at the top of your emergency room visit forms to have your immigration status? Are people complying with that? Is it stopping people from getting health care like some people were concerned about that? What are you hearing?
Well, we're hearing that it is having a chilling effect, that people are afraid to go to hospitals and seek care, or people that are in the immigrant community, and mainly because we have mixed status households. So you may have children that are U.S. citizens, or you may have a mom and a dad where one of the parents has status and the other doesn't. And these questions are being asked in all healthcare facilities. And, the failure to comply carries some pretty big penalties. So unless you are in what is referred to as a sanctuary jurisdiction, where state and city jurisdictions that are refusing to comply with these questions, then there's a huge risk for the healthcare workers. So it has really seen a chilling effect for the communities and the immigrant communities throughout the state.
What about the people who want to move to Mexico? Is there going to be any interruptions to that process? Is it a little more fluid than going the other direction?
Well, we've seen an exodus of a lot of families, and I've gotten a lot of calls saying, can I look into dual citizenship? Are there other alternatives? Is there a way that I can go to other countries, not just Mexico, but other countries for a temporary period of time, perhaps do outbound immigration. And so I think a whole new business model has formed for a lot of lawyers on looking into alternative immigration statuses in other countries throughout the world. Has
anybody come to you and said, I just can't stand that Trump won. I've got to get out of here. I need to go to another country. Whoa.
No, not in my business, but I'm sure there are people out there that are very, very worried about what's coming. Right. There's a lot of anxiety out there.
Well, I can hook you up with Bette Midler on Twitter real quick. Maybe we can have a chat with her. All right. How do they find your work if someone needs an immigration attorney and they like what they hear? Michelle Saenz Rodriguez, where are you at online?
I am at www.sralawonline.com in Dallas, Texas.
sralawonline.com. Is that right?
That is correct.
All right. Thank you very much. Michelle Saenz Rodriguez. Coming up next, there's a teacher in Louisville. And this is a disturbing story. I'm not happy to tell it. I do not enjoy these stories, especially since I have kids that are about the same age. These people really gross me out. But she wasn't just sleeping with a 16-year-old student. She got a tattoo of his name. What level of mental derangement is this? We'll talk about it next. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker. It's The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there. Welcome to The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Coming up in the next segment, I'll do a review on the James Show meetup that happened last night, the informal meetup, unofficial meetup. And also I have a bunch of emails to answer. You're not going to believe this. People disagree with me on whether or not Congress should get a pay raise. Oh, I'm so shocked. My next guest, who's been on before, the patent professor, John Rizvi, is on. And John, look, this is Christmas time, and we had the discussion on a previous James show about how like photographers can get in trouble if they have like a background that has copyrighted whatever in it, and they're charging people for pictures and whatnot if they don't get the proper license. I wanted to ask you about that, though, John. Aren't these some of these intellectual property elements coming into the public domain? We had like the Steamboat Willie rule forever, and then I think they just changed that law within the last year or so, didn't they?
They did. The Steamboat Willie version of Mickey Mouse is now in the public domain as of January.
Wait. We should stop. Explain the Steamboat Willie rule as it previously existed for the people who didn't hear our previous show.
Yeah, so, when I say Mickey Mouse is in the public domain, there's a huge uproar. So it's not the current version of Mickey Mouse that everyone thinks of with the white gloves and the red shorts and everything else. It's the original Mickey Mouse that was in the film Steamboat Willie, the black and white version that has gone into the public domain and is now freely available for anyone as of January 1st, 2024. So about a year now.
Yeah, so for my entire life, when it was explained to me in college, our intellectual property laws were based on Steamboat Willie. And that happened because the original rule, it was supposed to be for like 5 years or 19 years or something slow. But then Disney kept getting the law extended because they didn't want to lose the exclusivity to that character. And then eventually they just pulled up the drawbridge and said, we're going to stop fighting in this. I never got the explanation on why they stopped fighting it.
Yeah, so, they didn't stop fighting it per se. Just at some point it became ridiculous, right? So copyrights have been extending, and you're right. It was 14 years first, and then it went to 28 years, and it extended further to 70 years after the author's death. And you're right, a lot of lobbying by Disney for these extensions, and I just think it was not, the political environment just did not allow for any further extensions. Like once you have 70 years after the author's death.
Well, that's fantastic progress in my book. I mean, how ridiculous that it got stretched out, because I always used to bang my head because that was a literal thing, a Mickey Mouse law. Like, this is just a Mickey Mouse regime you got going here. Our copyright system literally was a Mickey Mouse regime.
And for years, the extension terms were just referred to as a cynical version. It was calling it the Disney Copyright Extension Act, because everyone knew that it was who the major proponent of it was. The ultimate, 70 years after the author's death is long enough. So certainly for any heirs to the whole purpose is so that, the old expression that an author is not famous or well-known or valuable until they're dead, it's not really true anymore. I mean, we have now authors doing incredibly well during their lifetime, but with 70 years of copyright protection after their death, that's more than enough time for their...
That's silliness. Absolute silliness. That's generations of people. So do we think that law will ever get shrunk back down to something more reasonable than 70 years?
Yeah, I don't... my prediction would be that it would not. I can be willing to put money on the fact that it's never going to get any longer, but I don't know if shorter is really something that... There's no one really... Part of the issue is there's no one lobbying for it to be shorter. On the other hand, a lot of the classic Disney characters or general copyrights, they're all coming into the public domain now. So we
have like Snow White or something was about to come up, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't recall about exactly when, but I know Peter Pan is coming up. A lot of the current version of Mickey Mouse is not all that far off. I think it's 2031 or 2036. So that's not like well into the future, and that's the current version of Mickey Mouse. That's a huge part of Disney's intellectual property coming into the public domain.
Well, this will also be really cool because we haven't seen the modern era of music come into the public domain. People will be able to sample or copy or do covers of songs. That was kind of calcified into just the very first decade or two of recording. And this is going to be cool to see all that come out into the public domain. I would just like to see that number get shorter, the 70, get it down to, maybe 18 years after the author's death so we can take care of his kids, should he happen to have any, is like the longest I would accept. Because me and Garrett are ready to make a remake of Saved by the Bell. And it'd be a lot easier if we didn't have to pay licensing fees.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that would bring it more in line with other areas of intellectual property. Patents, for example, they're only good for 20 years. And it has nothing to do with whether the author is alive or the inventor is alive or dead. You file for a patent, you have it issued. It's good for 20 years. Period. Doesn't matter if the author lived
agreed.
50 years.
Is there any way we could get that passed into law? Is there any stomach for that, or anyone even talking about that?
I don't hear much about that at all.
Yeah.
So you mean to bring copyrights more in line with patents? And
it's not a very sexy line of work you're in there, being a patent professor, John.
It's, they say patent attorneys find things exciting that nobody else does, and sometimes that's a reality. I mean, my students, perhaps when I teach at Nova, I can get them all worked up, but then I don't know how excited they are after class is done and the exams are taken.
Oh, patent professor, save some ladies for the rest of us. Tell them how to find your work online, John.
So, we're on, our trademark is The Patent Professor, so Facebook, Instagram, anywhere on social media, type in The Patent Professor. Our website is thepatentprofessor.com, so you can find us there. Since we're speaking about copyrights getting expired, and we're into the holiday season, just remember that the Grinch is not in the public domain, and Dr. Seuss and his estate is strongly defending copyright to them. So if you end up using that, you're very likely to get a cease and desist letter if you use it for any kind of commercial purpose. A lot of people make the mistake, and you have like people dressing up as Santa Claus. So you have someone dress up and have photographs as the Grinch, they're not equivalent. Santa Claus is in the public domain. The Grinch, on the other hand, is a copyright owned by the estate of Dr. Seuss. So you got
isn't this correct, patent professor? If you were within the licensing period of Santa Claus, you would be having to pay that fee to the Coca-Cola company. Didn't they have the original intellectual property on the Santa that we have today with the red suit and the white trim?
No, they do have copyrights to their version, which is slightly different. But part of the reason why there's no copyright on Santa Claus is that nobody can trace the origin to a single author, right? There's just not been able to trace it. And even if they could, it goes so far back that even under the crazy 70 years after the author's lifetime rule, it's expired and it's in the public domain. Whereas The Grinch That Stole Christmas was a book published in 1957, so it's still under copyright protection. And a lot of people ask, well, how come Jim Carrey got to make the movie The Grinch That Stole Christmas?
They paid the licensing fee, right?
Exactly. Universal Pictures obtained a license, and I don't know how much they paid, but they certainly paid a pretty penny for the licensing fees. So if you haven't paid licensing fees, you want to be really careful. Especially, and we have a lot of artists using the Grinch and selling products on Etsy and online. You just want to be careful. There's no, if you don't have a license, you're certainly subjecting yourself to a cease and desist letter and possibly even a lawsuit for that.
Yeah, well, the original St. Nicholas passed away in like the 300s or something, so I don't think he's going to be enforcing any patents on the original St. Nick. John Rizvi, thanks for your time again. ThePatentProfessor.com. Thank you, sir.
First, thank you.
All right, coming up next, I'll tell you about the fun little James Show meetup we had last night and answer some emails. Coming up on the James Show, I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3.